Have you ever caught yourself running from God? Let me ask you seriously, how'd that work out for you? Let's talk about it! Barry Smith here, author, husband, father, pastor of 25 years, and a guy who has run from God on more than one occasion. It's not like I don't like God. It's not like I want to run from Him, but even the best followers of Christ will occasionally run from God. But here's the thing. You can run from God, but you can't outrun God. Everyone knows at least bits and pieces about the story of Jonah. You know, the guy who got swallowed by a fish and lived to tell about it. Many believe the story to be literal, and some others will say it's just allegorical, while others will say it's just a fable. And for real, what are the odds of this really happening? A dude getting swallowed by a huge fish for 3 days and then getting vomited out on the beach? Wait, actually, that kind of sounds like a great ending anyway. I'd like to go to the beach right now. Anyway, my theology is pretty simple. So I believe it really happened, because here's what Jesus said in Matthew 12, verse 40. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man, speaking of himself, will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So I pretty much go with what Jesus says, because if Jesus can raise from the dead, I'm going with whatever he says. And he pretty much insinuates that it really happened, this story really happened of Jonah, or that it's such an important story that he actually used it to describe what he was going to do, dying on a cross, being buried in a tomb, and rising 3 days later from the dead. And the cool thing about this story is that we've all been where Jonah was. We've all ran from God at some point in our lives. Maybe that's why Jesus referred to this particular story. I don't know. Regardless, we've all found out the same thing when we run. We can run from God, but we can't outrun God. It's like the girl who wants to date a guy who's not a Christian, and she says to God, listen, God, this boy is really, really cute, and I know he can become a Christian. And seriously, God, you and I both know it's easier for someone to become a Christian than for someone to become really, really cute. So you, God, just need to stay out of this part of my life, she says. So she runs from God. Maybe you're in a marriage and you want out because you've recently met a person where it just feels right. And you're thinking that you locked into quickly with the current spouse that you have. So you run from God and His best for you. What you're doing is looking at God in the rearview mirror of your life as you run from Him, saying, I'm out of here. Stay out of this part of my life, God. And it's not like you're a bad person. You just know your circumstances better than anyone else. I get it. But maybe you need to be reminded that God knows you and your circumstances better than you do. You can run from God, but you can't outrun God. And you know why we run from God? We run because we think if we don't run, FOMO, fear of missing out, FOMO. And we think that God's plan is probably different than ours. So if we go with His plan, we'll probably miss out on something incredible. So we say, see ya, God. That's not a good thing. We also run because we don't trust God. Even though we know God's omnipotent, He's all-knowing. We know that He's incredible, and He created over 600 kinds of beetles and the solar system and all that stuff. But we still don't think we can trust Him. Like He's intentionally not going to have our back. So we run. Some of us run because we confuse God with our local church. Now, maybe you grew up in a church and had some really bad experiences. And in the past, your concept of church and God went hand in hand. And so you saw all the garbage going on in the religious legalism at that church, and you didn't want anything to do with that. So you bailed on the church and consequently felt that you turned your back on God. Let me tell you, this is all of our stories. We've all ran from God at some point in our lives. So if you're a runner today, know that you're not alone. Look at Jonah chapter 1, verse 1. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. Jonah knew all about Nineveh. It was a stinking, wicked city, killing and torturing his friends and relatives. And God was ready to crush that great city, but He wanted to give them one more chance. So you're telling me there's a chance? Sorry. So God asked the prophet Jonah to get things right in Nineveh. Verse 3. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. Now Nineveh was around 500 miles to the east of where Jonah was. Tarshish was around southern Spain, about 2,500 miles to the west in the opposite direction of where Jonah was. This was a huge no to God. So Jonah ran, verse 3. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port in Tarshish. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. There are three things that all people inevitably have in common when they run from God. We're going to talk about just one of those commonalities today. People who run from God run to the strangest places. They run to dangerous places, self-destructive places, places where outsiders would look at where they're running to and say, "What are you doing? Not a boat, Jonah. Stay on dry ground. What are you thinking?" It's like running from God and driving through rush hour traffic in New York or LA. What am I saying? It's always dangerous traffic in those cities, and no one would voluntarily drive there. It's like running from God and deciding to go rappelling or scuba diving or having your first cigarette or narcotic or going on a shopping spree that you can't afford or dating a bad boy or getting on a plane or going to a bar. You get the idea. When we run from God, we inevitably run to the strangest and most dangerous places, self-destructive places, places that seem really stupid to everyone around us except us. We run to places where when we finally come to our senses later in life, we say, "How could I have been so stupid?" Jonah, buddy, not a boat. Listen, when your Heavenly Father or your parents or your close friends look at some of your decisions and say, "You did what? You're going to marry who? You're dating him? You're going to work where? You're going to start your own business now? You're investing in what?" and they have a tone with you, you really probably ought to listen to them. When people decide to turn their back on God, they never run to safety. They run to the most dangerous places. And these dangerous places almost always have severe negative consequences. Consequences that can become incredibly dangerous. Situations that could have really negative results on the rest of your life. So you know what? Don't run from God. And remember, if you're running from God, whatever you do, don't get married. Don't decide to quit your job or your spouse or your family. Don't make major decisions when you're running from God, like getting on a boat, Jonah. Running from God is never a good decision. But the only thing worse is making major decisions or going to dangerous places when you're running from God. Because you most always make bad choices. Instead, address the man you're running from. It's not like God doesn't know what you're doing or the reason that you're doing it. He loves you. He doesn't want you to suffer. He doesn't want you to face all kinds of negative consequences, even if you're forgiven of all that. Have the conversation with God and let him know what's up. And then listen to him. You'll be glad you did. And let me know what you think in the comments below. Am I crazy and you should just sow your wild oats and when things go south, just keep going? Should you go ahead and make bad decisions and then come running back to God with all that baggage? Or am I right on in trying to save you a ton of heartache when you run from God? Am I hitting a nerve with you right now? You really know what to do. If so, do it. Stop running from God because you can run from God, but you cannot outrun God. He loves you that much. And as always, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel. It helps us get the word out. I'd really appreciate it. Seriously, we need new subscribers to keep this channel going. And if you like our stuff, consider supporting us with a tip on PayPal or tax-deductible donation at YouChoose.Community. All those links are below. So right now, go ahead and hit that thumbs up and share this thing because no doubt somebody you know probably needs to hear this. And if you're ready to stop running from God, let me know in the comments below, and I'll pray for you. I really will. Until next time, God bless.